content warning for Supernatural Season 1. There will be discussions of abuse, trauma, violence, gore, and incest.
Hello everybody, this is Taylor and Noah here with the second episode of You Didn't Catch That? Like, really? Really, Noah? How are you, 15 years late to Supernatural? And, today we're going to be discussing Supernatural Season 1. I am your host for this episode because I have seen all of Supernatural. And then there's Noah, who I will be slowly bringing for the ringer with me. Please, if you are watching this live, do not do any commentary that are spoilers, because again, he is experiencing it all for the first time, and it's just going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Actually, if you want to have some fun on my stream, if you're watching it on my stream, and I know you're not because my viewer count is currently 1, and that 1 is my phone for monitoring. So if you're in Taylor's stream watching it, feel free to throw spoilers in there. Spoilers to high heaven. Get up and about spoilers, and I won't see them. You can have a good old time. And Taylor will filter through and let me hear how the people are reacting.
Yeah, spoilers are fine on my side, just not his. Because I won't tell him. I will laugh at all your Crowley memes. I got a Crowley pillow right over there, though it's for Good Omens and not Supernatural. But, he won't find any of them. He will never be told about any of them. So. Alright. That's the brief description. Do I have to give, a description of Supernatural? It's a show about two brothers who go around and hunt things because, that's their family job. And then they fight ghosts and other monsters. And there we go. That's the season 1. It's ghosts and demons. Those are the big two. What are your viewpoints on Noah?
Oh, my viewpoints. Oh, what are we going to start with? What are we going to start with here?
You get to pick. This is your turn.
I guess. Yeah, this is my special episode, my first episode. Okay, my first impressions off of the first couple of episodes going into it, I was not feeling some of these boys. I was definitely I could relate to Sammy, and I was quite worried about Sammy getting to his meeting because I was like, holy cow, full ride at Stanford? Sammy, you gotta get that. Sammy, you gotta get that. You've got to go back and you got to live your life, and you can't let your stupid brother tell you what you are and are not based on how you were raised. That I'm certain that won't be a thing, trying to determine how tied down you are to who and how you were raised to be. I'm sure that won't come up again.
Completely.
Anyway, in those first
won't.
couple of episodes,
Absolutely
I was all on board
not.
with Sammy. I was desperate for him to.
Oh, your camera disappeared. Oh.
I was definitely very excited about seeing Sammy spend as little time as possible with the rest of his family, and in fact stop ghost hunting as soon as possible. I couldn't stand Dean at all. And
Oh, no.
that went away pretty quickly, actually. I think it was around episode 8 when I realized that I liked Dean quite a bit. It was somewhere around the time when he was what was going on in that episode? I think that was the one with the Striga.
The Striga is episode 18. Again, just tell me who the bad guy is, who the monster is. I got you. The Striga.
You see, that's the thing. I didn't write down who the bad guy was. It was just my ongoing commentary in my notes. But let's see here.
The Striga is episode 18. It's where you get a flashback to the first glimpse of what their childhood was in between their mom dying and them as now.
Okay, so it's not the Striga, it was the Bugs episode, the one where they're going around.
Episode 8!
Episode 8, the Bugs. It's when, I don't know, they were, I don't know, Dean just has this line to a kid that he was trying to get to help him cover up whatever they were doing. When the kid just goes and tells his mom the truth, he just says, "We had a plan, Matt. What happened to the plan?" And I was like, oh, wow. I love you, Dean. You're just so funny. You're just so dang funny. And that just continued to grow. And I realized when I come to the end of this, much like the boys, my position has become the complete opposite of what it was at the beginning of the season. I now am all on board Dean, and I can't stand Sam.
Oh, no.
And I hope that over the course of the next hour and change, we can get into all the gritty details about why Dean is awesome and Sam is bad. Much
So
like their dad,
I
John
believe
Winchester, who sucked.
yes. Neither of us like John. I don't use a lot of the fandom terms when referring to myself when it comes to this series, but those who know me would call me a one of the Dean girls, because there are Sam girls and Dean girls in the fandom, and these are just two of the very many vocab words I have listed for this first season for us to go over tonight, so you understand fandom culture surrounding this a little bit.
And
Uh,
we'll get into the fandom culture. We'll get into the fandom culture.
no, we will. But yeah, no, neither of us like John Winchester. If you like John Winchester, that's your opinion. I can't stand abusive parents in TV, no matter what their excuses are. So that's me. But
That's not valid. I'm not gonna let them be like that. That's not valid. If you like John Winchester, you are not a valid person. That's not valid. Your
listen,
feelings are not valid.
again, he's only seen season 1, okay? So those of you who are coming in with all your arguments for later season John, I know them. I don't care. He doesn't know them. I doubt he will care. Uh, so, just right off the bat, brushing that off. Um, what was it? So, you mentioned how in the Bugs episode, it's when Dean makes a joke about how we had a plan, Matt, and he, to not tell his dad anything, and to just lie and get them out of the house. But that's the moment that made you start liking Dean better. Is it because of the comedy or because of how he interacts with children? Because in episode 3, he also interacts with a kid and who just witnessed his father drowning, and he's really good with a kid in that episode too, and he has a lot of funny jokes in that episode too. So what's the difference between episode 3 for you and episode 8? I think it's episode 3. It was 3 or 2.
Well,
But
I have a note actually regarding that on episode 3. I could read it
yeah,
out to you if you'd like.
feel free
Okay,
to.
the bullet point. I have 3 bullet points in this episode. The second one is Dean plus kids equals surprisingly wholesome. I'm a big fan of Dean plus children. They seem like they go well together. Even when I was all aboard the didn't like Dean train, I was like, oh, dude can be cool with kids. Nice.
Okay.
I was excited about it. It was good to see that. It was a fun part of trying to find the fun as I was going through those first few episodes, which are a ride, especially if you're like coming at it with those 2020 eyes and you're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
we love to kill our mom characters and our girlfriend characters, don't we?
Um.
I haven't seen
Yeah.
so many people get fridged since a horrible accident at a local whirlpool assembly.
That is one of the things that Supernatural became most well known for in the early 2000s. And that is how they portray women, and they didn't become well known for it, they became infamous for it. Because in these first few seasons, actually all throughout the series, it gets a little better, but still all throughout the series really, all your female characters are moms, older sisters who are taking care of their siblings because their parents are dead, sometimes hunters, and then like they're whores or they're women who were a little frisky once right before they died. That's what you know about them. And like
Oh, and also
I
sometimes
don't use the two interchangeably. I mean the show uses that term interchangeably for women who sleep around a lot and for women who don't really do that but still get called it.
Oh, and also sometimes they are the monster, and like all the monsters,
Yeah.
they're stripped of all human experience, except for the demons somehow, which are
Especially
stripped of just most human experience.
yes, especially this first season. This first season has little to no human experience for the monsters. We do not care about their viewpoints. We do not care how they came to be monsters. We do not care if they don't kill people. We kill them.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that actually because
Feel
like
free.
yeah, there is this weird like I have a couple of moments and I have some screenshots and I'll have to go and find timestamps for the video version of this. But there's this line at some point where I don't even know. I'm not. Oh yeah, episode 5 where they're I don't know. It's some or other, I don't remember what the spirit is. I think it has to do with Uh,
The Wendigo?
it's not the one that only kills people that are disloyal. It's just some other spirit that is twisting how they view the world. But I think it's Dean that says like, spirits aren't exactly known for seeing shades of gray, and it's like, but
Oh,
they're
the woman in
people.
white. The woman in
Yeah.
white. The one who killed her
Yeah,
kids and then killed
yeah.
herself. Yes.
I think
That's a very, very, very well known myth.
it's yeah. Well, yeah, but it's just this whole element of like these spirits, and so many of the critters they fight are people or were at one point people, and just are so like essentially single-minded. There are these people that are just evil. There's the portrait episode where there's the girl that's a murderer, and like the twist is that it's the girl that's the murderer, not her dad.
Oh
She's the
yeah,
one
there's
that
gonna
killed the
be
whole
spoilers
family.
all throughout. So if you haven't seen
Oh
season one,
yeah.
don't watch this. Totally
And
forgot to
like
say
the
that.
big and like we find out that she killed her first parents and she was adopted into this family, and then she killed all of them, and now she's killing anybody that owns the family portrait, and that's the big like deal of the episode.
Yeah.
And it was so very like, oh yeah, I guess if you kill your parents you're just sick enough that you just keep killing people even when you're dead for no reason. People don't have reasons for the things they do.
Okay, so here's you're on a good track, and that is how the show presents it. But I do want to point out, Sam is the one who asks, "Well, why did she do any of it?" And Dean's the one who says, "It doesn't matter. We gotta stop her."
Yes, that's fair.
So if they had
It's
done a little more research, they probably would have found out more. It probably would have fleshed out the story a little more about why she was a psychopath so young. But yeah, no, the first season does not do a lot of that. You get that comes later on, and even then, it's only for like special cases as far as monsters go.
And I mean, I think the setting aside the conversation that we'll get to about native representation and influence on the first season, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. There's just like, okay, the biggest red flag, and this is also a jumping off point into another big old tangent that I want to get into, that we'll get into, regarding the connections between this show and the X-Files.
Yes.
But the biggest perpetrator of the dehumanized because you've got to be the monster of the week thing is the doppelganger changeling shapeshifter character, whose big reveal is that he's just a shapeshifter, and that's just what he is and what he's always been. It turns
Yeah.
out he was born like this, and he has the whole like X-Men mutant backstory where people hated him, so he decided to hate back and kills people for no reason. He's just a serial killer that also happens to be a shapeshifter. And he kills women specifically most of the time because this is season 1 of
Yeah.
Supernatural, and that's just the thing we do.
No. That's not just season one. So I do want to discuss this a little bit, and there's certain topics on it we cannot get into a lot right now because you haven't seen the other seasons yet. But the shapeshifters in the Supernatural universe play a very role.
Wait, so this is a recurring element. It's
yes.
not just like
Yes, all
As-
the monsters you see in this first season, there are others that are like them that will come back. I think everything comes back except for the Wendigo. I think the Wendigo only got used that one time. No, it's referenced again at the very least. But I can see the look you're making. But the shapeshifters often try and have like dialogues with Sam and Dean that Sam and Dean are just not ready to have. Like the first one, the one you see in this season, literally tries to explain himself, and he says, "I was born this way, and the first time I shapeshifted, like someone wanted to kill me." I can't remember exactly how his dialogue went. I did not care that much. I'm all here for the other characters though. Sam, Dean. I know I have quotes for them. I don't have quotes for the monster. But he goes on this little tangent about how he's been outcasted and mistreated, and that's why he kills, which very much came off as like a nice guy lecture to me. Like those nice guys who said, "Well, I do this and this and this for women, but they still don't date me, so now I'm just going to be an asshole to them." It's like that, but his next step was serial killer. We're gonna
Yeah,
jump
it's
the
definitely like,
serial killer.
you don't get to just like say, "Oh yeah, I was the victim of systemic bigotry
Yeah.
and just like hatred, and then I became a rampant murderer." Like
Eh,
there are a lot of people that are a victim of horrible bigotry, and they don't do a mass murder of passing women.
But
That's a you thing.
you wanna know who else tries to in the first season of Supernatural?
Hoops.
Um Bugs. The Bugs episode. Where systemic oppression and racism, and during the Trail of Tears, this tribe of Native Americans are forced off their land, but they don't want to leave, so they take a stand. So the white guys just come and kill them for 7 nights in a row. So now there's a curse on the land tied to the dead bodies, where even if you burn them, that's not going to stop the curse, because, hey, it's vengeance time, bitches. Which was also the archaeological, which was also the archaeological episode, and there's so much they said about that was just wrong. It was just wrong. It was. I have a lot.
I had a note. The moment they found the skulls, I was like, "That's great archaeology, guys! Putting them all in a box and taking them to the local state university. Great job, guys!"
So like, that's the thing. No local university would accept that just from seeing it. And would not, like, ask if there was more. The professor that they talked to in that about the bodies is just like, this is a fantastic find you all found. And where did you say it was? And they tell him where it was. And he just goes, well, I will be sending people out there. No, they would not be allowed to leave that room. They would have to talk to the cops, because when it comes to human remains, you have to go through a lot of, like, channels before you're able to, like, mess with them for very good fucking reasons. Like archaeologists, and this is just okay, this is not Supernatural related directly, but as an archaeologist, because there are people who come to our sites and don't understand this. When you're an archaeologist in America and you're working on a Native American site, or you're working on in some place where you think there might be bodies, you have to get government permission first. And then what you do is if they're Native American bodies, you contact the tribes within the area and you talk to them and you make arrangements for the bodies to be moved elsewhere after you find them and are able to clear and clean them off and get them out of there. Same goes with some of the artifacts. Some artifacts are sent for study, but if they're of any cultural significance, or like they're really good artifacts, they'll get sent to the tribes first, and the tribes will decide if they get studied or if they stay within the tribes. That's how the process goes. It's not grave robbing. And these fuckers just walk over, find a mass grave, and just get to walk away? No. Oh, no. No. Oh.
This is a show. It for sure is a show.
But it's another moment in Supernatural where, like, people who were systemically oppressed and brutally murdered, because other shapeshifters are murdered too. It's not just like that one. A lot of them are. They just don't get to feel those emotions because they killed people. So clearly, they're in the wrong. Despite the fact that in both scenarios they end up being killed, and it's. We could say there's very interesting commentary on how humans could be perceived as the real monsters, but that's pretty fucking obvious in this series.
I mean,
and
the thing that struck me
shapeshifters.
most.
Oh, sorry. Just one last thing. Shapeshifters in particular serve. Anytime they appear in the series, they try and have really important conversations, as I said earlier, and they try and make very obvious points, but they always go to the extreme with them. They're like incels most of the time they show up.
What struck me most about that episode is that the most horrifying, like, turn of events, sequence of things that happened, was all in the background story. Like, the whole, like, 3 suburbanites get killed, and then we had, like, an unpleasant 5 minutes in the attic at the end. And, like, to think that that's the revenge, that's, like, the petty revenge 100 years too late for mass slaughter of civilians, is, like, that's the big horror, is that this is all, like, this is all the revenge they get, and this is the focus of the episode, not the actual horror, which is America.
Yep. Yep.
It,
Yep.
it's trash. It's
But then
fun.
you have the argument, do the suburbanites deserve it because their ancestors committed the crime? Then you have that whole morality argument about
Ugh.
what type of revenge is good and healthy revenge, which is just a conversation that's going to come up a lot as we watch the series.
I mean, I'm not even interested in having it for this episode because it's just the magnitudes are so different. The conversation isn't even worth having.
Yep.
3 people get bug bites. An entire like culture is annihilated brutally and slowly. Like these, it's not even apples and oranges. It's apples and like a fragment of a red crayon that somebody chewed on. Like these are very different substances.
Oh yeah. Just gonna throw these trigger warnings up there because I forgot. We do discuss abuse and violence in this episode. Forgot to throw this up at the beginning.
Warning. Mm-hmm. Abuse, trauma, violence, gore, incest, all sorts of great stuff.
Yeah.
Things that will probably be getting talked about in one capacity or another today.
And like this uneven revenge is going to be a topic that comes up a lot in this series. They do, due to the backlash that they face, they do start to trail away from like existing cultures and using them for appropriation and myths a little, not a lot, but a little. And when they start to do that, it just becomes so much more Catholic.
Yeah, can we talk about that? Can I talk about my thoughts on this? This is okay. Like pretty shortly into the series, I don't even know when I was like, oh, so it's just gonna be Episode 4.
Yeah.
Episode 4, I was like, oh, it's just like Sandman, where it's basically Catholic, but with like cameos from other cultures. And we're still going to do the thing where we pretend that we're pantheistic, where every episode they turn to each other and one of them says, you know, in nearly every culture, shows up. Except this isn't true in any of those cultures, and this isn't true in any of them either. So what's going on? Yeah. I'm a Winchester, and I know every culture.
I can tell you're making fun of Sam, and damn it, dude. He's the college one. He's the one that studies the other cultures, despite the fact that, like, I don't think he ever took an anthropology class.
Dude, you're a pre-law student that tested well. Get over yourself.
Now, he does have some merits. You gotta give him some merits, because he did all that moving from town to town his entire life. Like, he did not get a normal education. Sam did fucking good.
Sam did well. He turned out pretty much all right. But on the subject of the show and its metaphysics, where it's just Catholic with cameos, and, like, really dumb cameos, too.
Oh,
that frustrate me. I have a list. I have a list.
You go over the list. You go over the list. I'm just going to say this. I cannot wait till you get to season 5.
Oh, no. Don't say things like that. Okay.
There's 2 episodes. I can't wait for you to dissect. Oh, it's going to be great.
First thing on the list of, like, weird other cultures that we're grabbing from. Not even touching La Llorona showing up in the first episode.
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of. But not really. Like, we're not going to say La Llorona because, like, Americans that, you know, don't speak Spanish don't know who La Llorona is.
Yeah.
But it's just going to be La Llorona. Like, just La Llorona, down to drowning her kids.
Yep.
Which is just a La Llorona thing. But we're going to call her a woman in white because that sounds sexier. I think it's because
it's also because
it sounds sexier, right? Yeah, it's because it sounds sexier.
No, I would argue that I don't think it's just because it's supposed to sound sexier, but also because of the fact that if you use a lot of foreign words that most of your target audience is not going to understand, you will tend to lose them. So in earlier episodes, they water down a lot of them to like English versions.
There's an element of that I was like kind of willing to get on board with.
I don't agree with it. It's still shit. They shouldn't have done it. They should have just called it what it was, or maybe not even used it at all. But that's what I took it as. Not like them trying to inherently make her sound sexier, but the whole most of our audience are white Americans who are probably not going to want to learn about Spanish or like other cultures really.
I think what I was kind of willing to be on board with it back when I didn't realize it was gonna just all be Catholic with extra like fringe attached. I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna like you're gonna keep saying in nearly every culture, da 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 da, and you're just gonna like draw little Venn diagrams. You try to gather a bunch of like unique cultural ideas and mesh them together into something that's kind of new, but also resembles something that we'd all kind of understand. And I was like, okay, I can be on board with this. We're gonna grab actual folklore and we're gonna play around with it. You're gonna draw interesting connections. Maybe find like fun hybrid critters that have a little of one thing and a little of another, and you've seen the overlap between the two that maybe hasn't been drawn before. I mean, it's not great. I don't love pantheistic attempts in like genre fiction. The biggest comparison I have to the show in terms of like the metaphysics is Sandman, where it's also, yeah, all gods exist simultaneously, except like capital G God is the real God, just to be clear.
Yeah.
That's the real stuff. Everything else is just sort of floating around nebulous story things.
There's so much I'm
And that's what
shutting my
and that's
mouth
what they
on
do
right now.
here.
That's exactly what they do. They try and say like, no, it's not going that way, but then later on it goes exactly that way. It does not stop.
And we'll get into my thoughts on like the implications of God existing. But just to start with my list of the weird cultural grabs, top of the list, Wendigo. I was terrified the whole Wendigo episode that something horrible was gonna happen. And it kind of did. Like, just like whenever you make a Wendigo movie and the Wendigo is a critter, you've already failed. Like, because the Wendigo is a broad, complicated concept that I don't feel confident enough to explain, just enough to say that it's a very cultural specific element that requires an understanding of a lot of concepts and philosophy that are very context specific to the culture they're from. And also there are a lot of
Yes.
different interpretations. It takes nuance to deal with a character or an element like
There-
that. So
There is one book that is a fiction book written by Louise Erdrich, who is Native American, who uses a Wendigo story in her book to influence the main character. It's called The Roundhouse. It also deals with sexual assault. That book has the best description of a Wendigo I have ever heard, and it's not even supposed to be like a real description of it.
mhm.
The Wendigo is a very complicated concept because it's a spirit as well as a concept as well as a person all in one within the culture. And that's all I'm going to say on the topic, because while I am while I do study anthropology, I'm more of an archaeologist rather than a cultural anthropologist. And I have not done enough research on it to give a perfect description of it either. But it's supposed to be more than just a metaphysical concept or a disease. And that's usually the two things you get from a Wendigo whenever you see it used in other media. And that, I may be getting my
Like the-
Louise Erdrich books mixed up. It might have been a different one, but I'm pretty sure it was The Roundhouse.
The default is basically what they get, which is like werewolf, but we push the cannibal a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which is whatever. You're blowing it, but like at least you have a couple of the core elements. You're not doing the Marvel thing.
Marvel touches on
Heaven help the
Wendigos?
Marvel thing. Taylor, we have things to talk about.
I
We'll
have
get
never
into
heard
it.
of this. We are not going to get into Marvel right now. Continue, please.
That's where.
Continue,
Oh boy,
please.
it's a thing. It's a whole thing.
I was not aware of that. Wow.
Your chat's about to explode with people telling you about how it's a thing. Anyway, second on the list, native curse.
Yeah.
I guess we're doing native curse. Cool. A native curse. That's.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't realize there's still the 1980s in this series.
Whew. Well, yeah, no, I have no outside context that can, like, explain why they went with that. If I looked for it really hard, I could probably find something from 2005, but, Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why they chose to do that. I don't know why they thought that was smart because like first off, why isn't like half of white America dead now? Cuz there were definitely tons of scenarios like that where there was definitely tons of people getting cursed by Native Americans. Yeah, it doesn't work for a world building concept because that should happen way fucking more and should be destroying way more people than it actually is affecting in the series. It doesn't make sure it doesn't make the time lapse doesn't really make sense of like how often it happens every so amount of years. And that is just them. I really feel like the gaps of how many years the curse is active really is just to follow the pattern that they established with John Winchester about how he's able to figure out this is supernatural because it happens once every 15 years or once every 75 years or something like that. It's always a number that can be divided by 5 almost always. So I feel like they just did that for the pattern. I don't know why they chose to do that. It's not, again, it's not good world building because then it should be happening a whole lot more in the world than what it is. It doesn't really serve much of a function within the episode itself. And I'm pretty sure when you were watching, I told you to pay extra attention to episode 8. And that's the episode of the curse. That's the bugs episode.
It's funny, you said it to me after I'd watched it, actually.
Oh, well, I didn't realize.
And I thought back, and I thought there was something else to look for, just as being different. And honestly, like besides that being the inciting element, I didn't feel like there was much. Besides the fact that I realized that I liked Dean. Oh, and also another thing that we'll get to when we start talking about the fandom and other things relating to the fandom. That
Yeah.
episode has also got kind of some significant moments for that too. Oh boy. So, number 3 on the list.
Real quick, the reason why I
Okay.
asked you to pay extra attention to episode 8 is the same reason why I almost told you to pay extra attention to I cannot remember the episode number, but it's Route 666, which
Oh
is
yeah.
also another episode about a
The race
systemically
episode.
it's the race episode. It's the systemically oppressed group tries to get revenge on this guy who's going around and killing black people because he's a racist dick, and the girl he likes is marrying a black guy because he also doesn't approve of interracial marriage. And so the police do nothing, but when some of the townsfolk, when he goes to attack the guy who's getting married to the person the racist liked, I can't remember their names, the dude ends up beating him to death. The black guy ends up beating the racist asshole to death. And apparently the sheriff did him a favor by never telling anyone that he committed murder and allowing him to get married and live happily because the sheriff felt bad for not arresting the racist for committing several murders. And then his ghost gets to come back and keep doing it. Yeah. Those two are the two of the lowest ranked episodes in the entirety of Supernatural. Bugs is the lowest ranked with Route 66. Or it's Route 66 that's the lowest ranked with Bugs tied with the series finale for second lowest.
I think with regards to like the race episode,
Yeah.
there's only one thing I can say in defense of it, I guess.
God damn it. Okay.
Okay.
What are you going to say to defend it? Because please be careful.
Okay, we've talked about how as
Oh no, you froze.
part like this weird like recurring trope, the spirits, which I guess is the catch-all term for we'll
Dead,
survive.
dead
The
ghost.
spirit.
Dead ghost.
You don't have to correct it all. It's okay if there's some fluff in the videoing.
Okay.
Anyway, spirits is their just catch-all term for like ex-human, like monster, spirit, ghosts, whatever. Like the through line through all of them, and frankly, with all of the monsters that happen to be people or have been people or are people, but the Winchesters consider them not people.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
through line is that as Dean says, they don't exactly see shades of gray. They're very mono-minded. They're really robbed of like an entirety of personhood, especially the spirits. They seem to be essentially like trapped in like their worst moment, which isn't a bad idea inherently. I think it's worthy of some exploration. And as like far as like mono-minded, urges towards violence, which seem to be a common through line with a lot of the spirits, being a serial, hate crime murderer does sound an awful lot
Being
like the
part
sort
of the
of thing that,
KKK, he was basically a member of the KKK, just didn't show up in the white cloak.
yeah, being like
Don't
one
try
of
and
those.
tiptoe around it. He's a dickhead.
Yeah, I'm not. Don't misread me. I'm
Okay.
not. I think
It
it's
sounded
just
like you were tiptoeing around calling him a
I'm not.
racist. He was a racist.
No, yeah, obviously a racist, gross, creepy, like horrible dude with a lot
Okay.
of like, yeah, that's the whole point that I'm getting to is that hatred so like monomaniacal that you'd go out and be a serial car killer, like that being all that remains of you after you die and being the thing that echoes through time after your passing is just your hatred made manifest physically. That's an interesting concept, actually. That's not a bad idea. And, like, if approached interestingly, like, intelligently by people that know what they're doing, like, you could tell a really compelling story about the ghosts of bigoted people and the way that their bigotry echoes through time and still scars people today.
You could,
Like, that's
but this
not a bad core.
you could, but this episode does not do it.
Yeah. I'm
No.
just defending, like, their interesting ideas here. And, like, to paraphrase Patricia Taxon, a lot of great art has been made by looking at trash art and saying, I could make this better.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
this is like, if you're the sort of person that likes Supernatural but is disappointed by this episode, there's a seed here that's really compelling that I think is worth exploring by
it's
future creators.
it's also something that Supernatural tries to do other times as well. The ghost of you being in your worst moment, the what's left behind is all the hatred, and they start separating. Like Poltergeist in the first season is very vaguely described. Latches onto negative emotion, can be conjured by negative emotion of the living. But there's this other kind of poltergeist that they see in the series that the Route 666 Chuck is a part of. And that is people who are dead who had so much hatred they become maniacal ghosts after, because not all the ghosts you see who are committing these murders is from hatred. And I would agree that it is an interesting start to try and explore what is left of you, if all the how it affects the world when all that is left behind from you is your hatred. But I don't think doing the first time you do that with like race issues was the right move, because one, fuck the sheriff. He didn't do anybody a fucking favor. He should have done his fucking job from the beginning. And yet the episode ends with everybody thinking, with like the show tries to make you think, oh, he wasn't that horrible because he let a guy get away with murder because he murdered a horrible racist serial killer. No, should have done his job right from the get-go. No. The sheriff can go fuck himself. No. You can argue that, like, well, he didn't have as much influence and power because he wasn't the sheriff back then. I don't care. He needs to not throw it into the other characters' faces that, well, I did this for your family, so I'm not a racist. No, that's not how it works. You still are probably kind of fucking racist. Like, you're lauding that over people's heads. Like, I have so much more we could say on this episode, especially like watching it from someone who grew up in an interracial family, and like I'm the white step kid. I'm not mixed like my little brothers or black like my stepfather. But this episode tries to talk about things that interracial families go through and then just blows right past them as if like none of that is systemic at all. It was just this one area. Like, no. No.
It was very quickly that I realized, oh wow, we are in a very different place in terms of how we understood like racism on broadcast television. Well, I don't want to. They're in a very different place in understanding racism from reality, aren't they?
Yes.
Like we know the moment that the sheriff says, "Are you calling me a racist? Do you think that I am a racist?" It was funny. It's the first time that I've seen media that uses the phrase "a racist" since like this summer, and it's funny how quickly I'm like, "Wow, I hate that word, that phrasing. That's terrible phrasing. What stupid phrasing that already
That's-
conveys that we've already failed."
Yeah, yeah, no, it pretty much does, absolutely. And if they were trying to make the sheriff kind of like, yeah, he's a dickhead, yeah, he was kind of racist, but he did help out in this really important moment, I would get that, but no, they try and brush all of his other shit under the rug with that one line, I'm not a racist, ask your mom. And then the mom being like, well, he's a good man because he didn't sell your dad out for committing a murder of a guy who was beating him to death.
It's so what makes it so horrible to me, I think like on top of all of how miserable it is, the way that it like takes the show's previous and ongoing like rest of its relationship with cops, which is cops suck and aren't great at their jobs, and also are usually getting in the way of like people that are trying to do the right thing and
Yep.
are just or unless they're actually in on the horrible thing. Like in basically every other episode, when they're doing in the faith healing episode, the cops are dumb and like corrupted and on the wrong side of things. In the
In the water
we
one,
never got back to my list, but I have a
and
second point on my list.
yeah, in the
Let's hop
water
on to
one
that
too.
now. Third point on the list: pagan god. In the pagan god episode, the cops are also super in on it. Super in on the. They're in on the human sacrifice
I was
as
like,
part of a fertility ritual to the pagan god.
I'm just gonna
The
throw this
human
out here.
sacrifice.
I'm just
It's
gonna
part
throw
of a
that.
pagan ritual,
I'm just gonna throw it
a
out there real
fertility
quick.
ritual to a pagan god that manifests as a scarecrow.
I'm just gonna throw this out here. At least, they got their influence from a white country instead of one of the countries of color that they could have easily pulled that from. Because oftentimes when you see in media like pagan gods that are blood sacrifice, it's usually like people of color doing it, not white people. Or it's like white.
People of color.
Yeah, or it's like white people and Children of the Corn, because the Children of the Corn do it too.
Bullet point number 4 on this list: Hindus meditating about golems. Hindus meditating about golems. In the Hell House episode, the one where the whole premise is that belief can create monsters, a thing that should rock the metaphysics, but like all the other standalone episodes, doesn't seem to get brought up again. Shout out to the bugs and the Indian curses, I guess.
Oh shit! It is a Hindu
It turns out
symbol.
if you put the right Hindu, if you put the right Hindu sigil on the wall and you just think hard enough, a thing will exist. And we know this, Sam tells us, because one time a bunch of Hindus were sitting around meditating on golems. Tibetan monks. Hindus were thinking about Jewish golems? Of course!
That one went all the way over my head.
Of course!
Please continue.
It's great!
Please continue. Dissect that a little more, please, because that one went right over my fucking head.
Holy cow. That one was like, my brain, like, I popped a circuit on that one. I was like, oh yeah, Tibetans thinking about golems. A thing that would happen ever.
And like another instance of, oh, the guys are thinking of two things that are similar, but they don't know the other term for it, so they use like the English term for it, which is not the same thing at all.
That's the only excuse I can come up with. It's like, oh yeah, the writer is like, we're trying to think of something. Maybe there's something in Hinduism or Tibetan monastic culture that resembles a golem, but they decided to just go with the easy word, like, that that one rubbed me wrong in a way that not even the Wendigo did. Like the Wendigo, that's a classic mistake. Indian Curse, classic 30, 40-year-old mistake.
Doesn't make them better, but we've
Doesn't make them
seen it
good.
a lot by white guys.
Like, okay, you're tripping over that same stone, but a lot of people have tripped over this new stone. You went out, found a new stone, put it in front of yourselves, and face planted on that stone that you found. That is what you did. You had to go get a whole new stone for this.
I'm trying so hard not to just
Brings
break
us-
out laughing. Because this is a serious subject, and this is like the issue with like cultural appropriation, especially when you don't understand it. It's like your reaction is making me fucking laugh. Okay.
Which brings us back around again. We've talked about it before, but I just want to make it the center stage of conversation. Everything, as we've established, is just Catholic with cameos.
Yeah.
It's Catholic with cameos.
Or if like I would say the first season is extremely Christian with cameos. It's not specifically Catholic.
Holy water is a Catholic thing. I don't know any Protestant churches that do the holy water thing.
Okay, but
Well, that might be the vampire influence. I'll get into that.
yes. But if I hadn't seen the later seasons, I would say it's Christian influence with like cameos, but you're right. It's extremely Catholic. Especially when you get to season 5, 4? A lot of stuff happens in those seasons.
Oh,
It becomes...
do we meet saints? Do we meet archangels?
Oh, sweetie, you guessed it!
Oh, no! Please, no! Okay. I put a pin in this. Let's just jump onto that while I was wondering.
You're right.
I've got
you
a
were,
fork in the
you
road
were
here,
able,
and I don't know which fork.
You did a really good job of watching the material and interacting with it and figuring out, oh, Catholic. Whereas I, who grew up in a house that had a multitude of religions, just thought, oh, Christian. And it took me a while to realize how Catholic it was.
In your defense, like the only like explicitly Catholic thing really is the holy water, at least as of this season. I'm sure there are a few other like solid stuff, but the only recurring element is that. And in your defense, they do a lot of like vampire-y stuff, like the whole salt and burn the bodies thing.
Yeah.
I had to pause for a second because I was like, hey, there's an ongoing, in nearly every culture, thing that you could say about like burial rites. Like there is, not nearly every culture, but it's a common enough occurrence that like people are worried about making sure you take care of the bodies of your deceased. That's like a relatively common enough taboo, especially in like a lot of European cultures. I'm thinking of like, I don't know, the time I read Antigone in high school, like going back to the Greeks, we all want to make sure our dead are taken care of in some capacity or another.
Antigone is an interesting one to jump onto, considering what else we'll be talking about tonight.
So, wait. Oh, you're getting ahead of me.
I'm just drawing the connection there.
But it's not an Antigone thing, is the thing, though, because it's not a burial rites thing. It's salting and burning the body is a vampire thing. It's like an Eastern European don't let the dead come back thing, as far as I understand it.
It's, and I don't know the history behind that as well as I do about some of the other things we've been discussing. And actually, talking about all this makes me feel like I don't know any of the history really much at all. But the salt thing is a ghost thing. There are lots of people who believe ghosts can't interact with salt. If you had salt, you can get a ghost to leave you alone. It's like but
so that's like 19th, 20th century spiritual.
Yes. Here's the thing. The show very clearly takes that concept of salt and evil spirits can't interact with salt and applies it to everything. Because never at any point in the series is it even hinted at that salt does anything to demons. And the boys just assume salts will keep demons out of a room. It's never established how they come up with that. It's never they never have a conversation about salt and demons. They just assume because salt works on ghosts, it'll work on everything.
Except for like the thing that Meg says like, "Oh, salt won't work on these for reasons," and then we never get back to that.
Never.
I guess it works on the other sturdy stuff.
I
I
mean,
guess.
except for if I'm remembering correctly, salt doesn't even really work on demons in the series. The boys just assume it does. There's no evidence that salt at any point in time in the first season works on demons. It doesn't keep them out of the rooms. It doesn't, because it's always after they've stopped chasing the guys. Like even when
Like
they
they used it on.
even when they salt the door after they save their dad and try and run out, the demons don't not step into the room because of the salt. It's because they're still tearing the door down, and then they see him go out the window. So why would they get into the room when they can go outside?
I'm sure you're hinting at something that might come up later, or you're just like extrapolating from what you've seen. Just this like salt and demons.
No, it's because they use salt on everything in the series. In every episode,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
use salt in some way. But with the ghost, you see the spirits interacting with the salt. With the demons, you don't see it at all, so why do they think it works? That's my thing. The salt and burning the bodies ties into that. They're never told salt can help burn bodies or salting a body stops the spirit. They just assume because salt stops spirits. So they assume by putting the body in salt, that's gonna like drag the spirit back or weaken it. When like there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing that really supports that besides the belief that salt can stop a ghost from getting into a room.
Hey, it's all a mess. The metaphysics are out there. Oh yeah, hey, we were about to go on this tangent earlier before we got on like the vampires, demons, salt. Salt, I think that comes from
Yeah.
like 18th, 19th to 20th century occultism, but I think that it like has a
There's
longer history, but that sounds like it's
there's
something that would have gotten popularized around the days of,
there's also
seances and all that
there's
nonsense.
also lots of superstitions around salt. Like, have you ever heard if you spill salt, you have to throw some over your shoulder for good luck? There's lots of things like that interacts directly with salt. But again, the series does a good job of explaining why the boys use things for certain monsters they fight. Except for salt. They only explain salt once when they're fighting a ghost and how it doesn't kill them, but it gets them to go away and it can keep them out of a room. And then they never, ever say if salt works for anything else, but the boys use it for everything else.
It's their catch-all. You just gotta add a little bit of salt. It's also a
They're
great
wizards
excuse to
from
have the
Dungeons
boys
and
running around with
Dragons.
guns.
They're wizards from Dungeons and Dragons. You've always got to have a pouch of salt on you.
Oi. Hey, so I put a pin in this earlier, and we got into a little, but hey, it doesn't seem like there's any good supernatural stuff around here. And like Sam brings it up when we go to the faith healer. He's like, "Hey, all the stuff we've seen, why does it all have to be evil?" And like obviously Sam's personally invested because now he's got the supernatural, you know, title. Uh but like
Because he's psychic. That's what you're talking
because
about,
he's a
right?
psychic boy. Turns out he's a psychic telekinetic boy. And he's got a personal investment in as also he wants to heal his brother, but like he wants to like see, hey, maybe there's stuff that is supernatural and not evil. Because hey, as a viewer, I was just thinking it's weird that all this stuff would exist and there'd be no supernatural good. Hey, this is all inspired by Catholicism. I wonder if, oh no. And it was partway through the
Please.
season when Taylor quietly accidentally spoiled to me that angels and heaven was a thing. And oh, oh boy. Oh, I'm in danger.
You're in so much danger. To be fair, I completely forgot that it's not apparent in the first season angels exist because demons exist, so I forget people don't assume angels are right around the corner. So, that's on me. My bad. My bad. But yeah. Where were you going with that?
I mean, I had already like I was asking the question, hey, if demons are a thing, I suppose angels would have to be a thing, and if hell's a thing, I suppose like that just confirmation of suppositions. And now I know that archangels and saints are gonna be a thing. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I want to see the one that killed a dragon, but also I want to see the one that isn't fully canonized, that's just
You're
respected in certain parts of Spain. That's a dog.
you're
The dog saint. I want the dog saint.
yeah, don't get hopeful. If you've read the Bible, New Testament or Old Testament, and you have a previous already solid understanding of angels, you're not gonna know. You're not no. They're not gonna acknowledge any of the known angels, besides like a couple.
Rip all the Gabriel stands, I guess.
Oh, we're moving on. We're moving on. We're not going there.
Rip all the Gabriel stands, I guess. I guess it's nothing, no good news for them in this show in Supernatural.
Okay, where are the Gabriel stands you talk to? Because I really want to know what else Gabriel is in.
I mean, like, I don't know. He showed up in Good Omens. He was a jerk there. But
Yeah.
so was everybody that wasn't, our main two boys.
See, Gabriel sucked in that series, so I forgot he was in there.
That's a valid reaction. That's a valid and healthy reaction.
I also completely forgot like Michael and Uriel are also in there.
Oh man. Oh boy.
Interesting.
Here's the thing. Here's a vine for you, Taylor, actually. Here's the thing for you to talk about. Here's the thing for you, because I know that I've been going off more than my fair share, and I want to thank you for being so patient with me.
This is your episode. You're supposed to. I'm enjoying these reactions. When we were doing the recording for the last episode of season 1 yesterday, I wanted more of these reactions. So I'm glad we're getting them now, finally.
I was saving the good stuff for the people.
Okay,
So,
continue.
Taylor, in episode 9, where they return to their family home,
Yes.
they recruit the help of a character named Missouri,
Yeah.
who, my notes here say, Taylor likes this character. I'm calling it. So I'm calling it. When I saw Missouri personally, my experience was like, oh boy, I like her, but also I'm getting a lot of red flags in the back of my head. There are a lot of, oh boy, we've got a history of certain characters with this archetype, with this particular profile that are a thing.
Yes.
And Taylor, what are your thoughts on Missouri?
So when I was a kid watching the show for the first time, I was not aware of the generally racist stereotype of like Southern black woman who's sassy and loves to help main characters. But that's exactly what Missouri is. And you're right. I love her. I love her character. I like that she is one of the only people besides their father who puts the boys in place because they act like they know everything, but then they make it obvious they don't know shit. And Missouri points that out. She's also one of the only people who find out about Sam's powers and then respects him instead of being terrified of him after finding out about his powers. And I really respected her for that. But you're right. There's a long problematic history of showing people of color in that way. At the same time, I love her. I love her as a character. But that doesn't mean they did her right. Especially
it's because she's competent, isn't it?
It's because she's competent. She's so competent. She knows exactly what... Like, even when she makes the mistake about the spirit in the house, she still realizes later, oh, Sam's noticing something and he's scared to tell me. He's probably got a power like mine. I'll be back around later just to check. And then she comes back around later to check and she's like, Sam, you know what? You were right. It was still there and I was wrong. And she's able to say that without making them feel like shit, unlike John Winchester. Unlike John Winchester. I love her because she knows what she's doing. She has experience. She doesn't let other people push her around. But you're right. There's a problematic history with the kind of character role she fills. And I will acknowledge that. But I will also acknowledge that even rewatching the series, while I acknowledge the problems with it and how they're really problematic with all their women characters, I still love Missouri, and I wish she had gotten to do more, and she deserves better than what happens.
Oh, something happened? Oh boy.
Something
I was
happens
wondering
with
if
everybody you meet. Something happens with everybody you meet. There's only like 3 characters from this first season who never come back.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
kind
no,
of
there's
I'm
4. There's 4. And 3 of them are women, and 1 of them's a dude. 3 of the
I'm
women
kind
never
of
get to come
excited.
back.
I kind of like the prospect of that actually. Like
Yeah.
there just we kind of discussed this last night, and for those of you who don't know, last night we recorded us both watching the finale to be released as like a fun edited video at some point eventually.
Yeah.
That takes time, but at some point eventually,
We'll
and
be
like
doing
one of the big things that we were talking about was
personal live reactions at the end of each season. So there will be several of these to follow up where we'll have more in-depth conversations about the characters.
oh boy,
Yeah.
do we?
Yes. Continue.
Anyway, you were saying.
No, you were going on somewhere with her.
Oh, I've forgotten. I was referencing something we were talking about last night because of something you said, and now I'm lost. Let me see if I can't clear up.
See, that's why you gotta be careful when you're trying to reference things.
My train of thought has vanished here. I'm sure I'll remember it when I'm editing this later.
I wish Missouri had gotten to do more because she's shown to be competent and she's shown to have a clear connection to their father and she's shown to know the boys. But she's only relevant when the boys need her. And that's an issue that happens with a lot of characters. They have clear connections with Sam and Dean. They could clearly reach out to them, and they clearly have reasons to. But they only get to come back when the boys need them, not when they need the boys. Because they never need the boys, because the boys aren't needed much at all, except for the random occurrences that pop up, apparently, in these first seasons.
The thing, another thing about her that is a massive red flag, and just the coup de grace of all red flags, is that she's the only adult and the only adult in the know that we ever see obey John Winchester, King of all turds.
Yeah.
That's holy cow, the worst thing ever.
There's only 3 adults.
She's smarter than John. She's absolutely smarter than John. Why is she taking John's orders?
That is a great point. And it's another issue with her character, and that's something I don't particularly like, but I feel like she shouldn't have had to, like, be a lifeline for the guys. I feel like she shouldn't have had to listen to any of the Winchesters. I feel like she could have been, I feel like she should have been able to solve what was going on in the house by herself without needing the boys to get her over there. I feel like the episode would have been better if Missouri sensed something was wrong, since she was watching it for so many years, and she's clearly competent, and then called the guys up to get them to come back to their family home to help her clear up the house. I feel like that's how the episode would have gone, because it would have given her more agency and more stuff to do, because she can clearly do it. Instead, you make her seem like she's this professional, and then you keep ruining her professionalism by giving the guys there's something still not wrong, it's still not gone. Like, and I get it, it's supposed to show Sam's growing power, but Missouri was willing to listen beforehand and admits after she was wrong. So why is it that just that one moment she's going to be really arrogant? Is like the 2 times she's very arrogant in the episode is when she's telling Sam to calm down, that it's done, but she's still side-eyeing him like, oh, maybe I need to check again. And when she first meets the guys and tells them nothing is wrong with that house because I've been watching it. Those are the 2 times where she really comes off as, like, cocky. Mm-hmm. And they're the 2 times she's wrong. And, like, I feel like she suffers from something that a lot of characters in the series suffer from, where there are moments they have to be stupid for the boys to shine. And if your story relies on those kind of moments for your characters, and a lot of them, it's not a great sign. It's not a great sign.
Yeah,
But I do
writing
love
red
Missouri.
flags.
I do love Missouri. Her writing could have been done much better, but her actress is amazing too. Like,
Oh
I'm
man.
just completely biased.
And that's sort of a like there are a lot of big themes that we can get into about like my thoughts about the show, and we get into those in like our live viewing, especially with it regards to this characters of Sam and Dean. The thing that I was trying to remember, that just sort of flashed in my head, was just the way that um the episodic adventures, how they connect to the overarching story or how they don't. We've already talked a bit about how, like, in terms of world building, the episodic, like, critters and demons and stuff, or spirits and curses, do not tie in at all and raise a lot of
Yeah.
interesting questions that sometimes intentionally raise questions that just don't get answered, like with regards to the faith magic making things real. Not even touching
Yeah.
that. Um,
And the curse,
it's
yeah.
interesting to hear that so many characters get reincorporated later on, because that does tell me that they like realize what they were doing here, which is having these standalone episodes, which I love. I am a massive sucker for standalone episodes. They're like my favorite. I love it. I always feel like that's where like the best, tightest, like most self-contained storytelling gets told. But you have to, if you have an ongoing show and it's going to evolve, you do have to like incorporate character growth and change and like choices into the standalone that are still going to build up along
Yeah.
with the characters in terms of the story, even if the plot isn't there. The story still has to move forward, even if the plot doesn't, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
So it's interesting to hear that characters and elements get reincorporated later on, retroactively making these episodes into something that's a part of the overarching plot and story in a way that they weren't
Well,
originally.
it'll
I
become
look forward to seeing how that turns out.
yeah, it'll become pretty apparent to you why they started doing that, and we'll talk more about it once we get into the later seasons. But I do love Loretta as an actress, and I love seeing her in Supernatural, and like seeing her in Supernatural is kind of how I found out about her. So, yeah, there's problems with her character. There's extreme problems with the writing, but I'm not blaming the actress. That is the writer's fault for using her that way.
I've definitely heard that this is one of those shows where if you look back
Yeah.
as a viewer after it ends, you can see the writing issues from the beginning. And
Yes. Yes.
I'm trying to see if I can't guess what those are going to be, because as we've discussed, I'm not the most attentive person, but I'm taking this as a bit of a challenge. And I'd like to think that it may be pointed out one or two of the things that
You
prove to be big issues later on.
You
Okay.
actually have already, and I'm very proud of you for being able to figure this out already. Um, there are some that are much more apparent than others. Just like throwing this out there, me as a 12-year-old watching for the first time could pick up on them. That apparent. Versus some where like I could only notice now watching again as an adult. So yeah, you're doing good so far. And anything like you don't pick up on, we'll definitely be discussing once we get towards the final seasons, because I will definitely be bringing them up.
We're moving into, I think, the last 19 minutes here, so I think we can talk about what I think is probably one of the biggest things that the writers don't handle well all the time, and in fact, really screw up royally with.
Should we do
And also, the worst character in the show, king of all turds, John Winchester himself.
trigger warning for talking about parental abuse, because that's a big one when discussing John fucking Winchester.
Oh man. And hey, if we have bonus time, we can talk about the fandom later too. But let's get our John Winchester rant out before we run out of time.
Oh, god damn it.
So, John Winchester, my reaction sucks. Massive sucks. I tweeted about this show while I was still on like episode 8. I was like, I like these boys. Also, I hope they don't meet their dad. I could already like smell, oh, their dad's bad. He sucks. Before we'd done any further flashbacks, before we'd even seen him be an abusive turdmonger, just like knowing that this is some weirdo guy that went from losing your wife to like random supernatural creature hunter, that's a red flag. And turning your boys into hunters, that's a red flag. Even before I knew his creepy abusive methods of doing so.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, this guy sucks. It's sort of like with the changeling earlier. Yeah, you're a victim of something horrible that happened to you in your life. You don't go and do the thing you're doing. This is a weird choice. This is a you thing.
Don't become a serial killer. Like,
You you're doing a weird thing. And then we met him. And then we met John Winchester, and he was absolutely everything I thought he would be, and way, way worse. Holy cow. Super abusive, super bad dad, like, and
So,
also like, oh, oh, it's so horrible. Taylor, take it over. I'm
so,
I'm overwhelmed by how horrible he is.
I've only been watching Supernatural for 12 years. I was a little kid. I was 10 when I first saw my first episode, and it had nothing to do with John. It was in the middle of season 4. Then I went back and watched all the earlier seasons, and before John even showed up, anytime his name got mentioned, I was anxious. Like, I felt sick in my stomach. And as an adult, I realize now what it was, and it's like your self-preservation instincts kicking in. Like, oh, you've experienced abuse before, you're noticing the signs even if you aren't consciously noticing. It's time to get the fuck out of there. And that's exactly what John is. He is a character there to unsettle you, who they try and make sympathetic and understanding, but it doesn't work. Because he does so much stuff to his kids that's just so fucked up. Him telling Dean. So you get a hint of it in the very first episode where he gives Dean Sam, the baby, and tells him to run out of the house with him and never look back. And then you see Dean do this later on in the season with another kid and telling them for them to get their sibling out of there and never look back. And it's a really striking parallel because when John says it, I feel uneasy. But when Dean says it, I feel like, oh, those kids are going to be fine. Because John is just... he's bad. He's really just... And the fact that he trains Dean from childhood to be a child soldier, and not just a child soldier because of hunting. No. Dean and Sam themselves attribute a lot of their father's negative qualities to him having been in the Marines. His OCD with taking notes, his obsession with using a bunch of codes for everything. And you later find out that's not from him being in the Marines. That's from him training to be a hunter. When you find out about the Jack or Daniel's death, I cannot remember his first name, but the guy who trained him to be a hunter, he taught him all of that. That's not from the military. That's not from the Marines. But Sam and Dean aren't aware of this, and so they just keep brushing like all their father's like really abusive behaviors off from being in the Marines, which says something about the show's views on Marines, which I am not a big supporter of the Army. I appreciate veterans. I don't appreciate the system that the military is in and of itself. But it makes it very clear where the show's trying to go with them, because they see him as a sympathetic light, but they also clearly don't really understand what they're trying to establish here with that connection they keep drawing. Just all the mental abuse, all the emotional abuse, all the physical abuse, because
Oy.
Dean in that final episode was expecting his dad to beat the shit out of him.
Oh, yeah.
Sam, when they meet, I think his name is Matt, the other psychic kid, and he said, we got lucky having dad, at least he didn't beat us. You can see Dean look away from him. And then he looks back at the house, and Dean's face is covered in shadows. Completely. You cannot see it. And when it turns back, he's looking back down at the car and he says, yeah, we were lucky. And he doesn't say anything else to Sam. He gets in the car. He doesn't meet Sam's eyes the moment Sam says this, because Sam's right. John never beat Sam. John did beat the shit out of Dean several times. Just, he's a shitty person.
And the way that he produced these two kids, how Sam is sort of as like a side effect of being this spoiled baby of the family. Like we see in flashbacks, he's super spoiled, like super like weird baby of the family, and somehow that's the ingredients that turn him into like having the same patterns of behavior as his dad, who loves him more than he loves Dean, who's just his child soldier.
Yep.
And like you're saying, you know, the reason that Dean doesn't freak you out when he says the things that John does is because Dean is a nice person, and doesn't like isn't an abuser and like is built to protect people and genuinely means it. That's the thing that he is invested in beyond the trauma training.
Yes, and I'm glad you're not saying that's because of the trauma training, because him genuinely caring about people and trying to protect them is not just because of how his dad trained him as a kid. So I'm really glad you understand that. There's some people who argue Dean's only that way because John trained him to be that way with Sam. No, that's not true. Watch season 5 again, everybody.
They clearly, I mean,
Season 5.
clearly Dean finds Sam even in like as a child, like their relationship at the hotel during the Striga episode, like he does care about Sam in a capacity that is independent from his relationship with Dad. Sam is the
Yeah.
only other person in Dean's life when Dad leaves the room, and he gets to feel this sense of protection over him. Like, of course this is a sincere thing. Getting to protect Sam is the only like capacity in which he gets to be independent and in control and do the right thing. Because hey, a thing that gets brought up at the end of the season, Dean does a lot of horrible stuff whenever like anybody
Sam
else is in charge of him.
or John. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
we want to talk about like distinctions between
Just-
trauma reaction and
I want to point this out real quick because this is relevant to what you just said. I actually quoted that episode. And the quote was exactly, Sam says, well, you've got one, no, after they talk about that and they talk about how, Max, the other psychic kid, not Matt, was beaten by his father and uncle and didn't have the same advantages they had. Later on, when they return to the hotel, they're packing and getting ready to go. And that's when Dean says, well, you have one advantage Max didn't have. And Sam's like, yeah, we already talked about this. What, Dad? Because Dad's not here right now, Dean. And Dean says, no, me. As long as I'm around, nothing is going to happen to you. And that's season 1, episode 14, 41 minutes and 7 seconds in. And that is relevant to this whole conversation. Because even when Sam brings up Dad being the reason why they aren't as bad as, like, Max's life was, because they got lucky with him, Dean's not able to look. And then later, Sam's assuming, yeah, Dean's going to sing Dad's praises again like he always does, but you never once see Dean sing his father's praises, besides in his capacity of being able to hunt. He always says the man was a genius when it came to hunting. He never sings his praises in any other way besides how much the man cared for Sam. And I feel like that's important to point out, because the 2 times Dean compliments his father, or the 2 topics he compliments his father over, is 1, how much he cares for Sam, and 2, how well he's able to hunt these like monsters that are out in the world. Monsters, because not all of them are, but according to the hunters, they are.
we've got a whole like year and change of this series to get through, and I look forward to trashing John from here to the ends of the earth. Just so much John trashing. I'm very on board with it. Great stuff.
It's gonna happen.
One thing that I would like us to get into in the final 9 minutes, because I want us to end tight, tight on the 90-minute mark. We as tight as we can. Make sure nobody that I know personally is in the room when I talk about this. You know,
Oh God.
the fandom.
So
I knew
yeah.
from the get-go that I was dealing with one of those fandoms before I even started this series, just from like the Sarah Zed videos about Super Hulock, like to understand that there was a trifecta fandom, a conglomerate of these 3, you know, series fans working together that was so tightly interwoven that it had its own name, was a red flag to me.
Yeah.
Super Hulock.
Yeah.
That's when I knew that things were gonna be creepy, and then Taylor introduced me to a word that awakened the demon inside of me that knew about the creepiest parts of a part of the fandom.
So
Taylor,
hang on, I'm just gonna throw this out there. Time for fandom vocab, and
fandom vocab time. Oh boy!
fandom vocab time. We are going to be discussing the first ship, really, from Supernatural, because what else are you gonna ship when you're only got 2 main reoccurring characters? And that is Wincest.
Oh boy!
And it's the ship between It's typically Wincest is the ship between Dean and Sam, though you can find some versions of Wincest that is the daddy cest, which includes John. This series, the fandom for the series was very young when fandomsters first starting to really grow. And if you had watched it from the very beginning, you only have two main characters. And it doesn't help that there are moments within the series itself that kind of like hints at flirting between the characters. Like in the Striga episode, Dean says to Queens, and the kid says, "Yeah, I'm sure you are." And there are other moments throughout this first season where people assume Dean and Sam are a gay couple, including the Bugs episode instead of brothers. Yeah, twice in the Bugs episode. Which, just as a side note, it's a pain that's fucking relatable because me and my little brother, we look super alike. But there's been several times where we've gone to like conventions together, like dressing up as people from the same fandom, and people like one time he dressed up as Mercury and I dressed up as Penny from Ruby. And cosplay, and people assumed we were a couple the entire fucking time, and I kept having to correct them. Because that's my brother, and I'm gonna hug him in public because of course I'm going to hug my brother in public. So it's a relatable pain, but it was gross to see that the fandom took that and was like, yeah, we could ship it because all these people in the series don't realize they're related.
I don't. And there's so much to the way that this show handles queerness.
Yes.
Specifically, season 1, episode 20, the vampire episode. The one with the second rape kiss in the season, this time with two women.
Yeah.
One woman turning another into a vampire with a vampire blood French kiss. We're using all the content warnings today.
Yes, we are.
It was.
Wasn't the first non-consensual kiss with Dean? Didn't one of like the demons
it was,
kiss him?
and it was part of a ghost trying to make him
that's right.
unfaithful so she could kill him because
it
sounds
was
stupid,
with
but I
Sam
guess,
then.
like
It was with
said,
Sam.
Ghosts can't see shades of gray.
Yeah.
So
it was with Sam.
it was. Oy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that maybe the series has a problem with queerness. Maybe just a little.
The series, you're not even out of season 1 yet, and the problems with queerness and just women and like just anything that isn't white guys in the series is very apparent. And I would like to say they get better on some things, but they really, when it comes bare bones down to it, they don't. They look like they take the steps to get better, but they don't. So all these issues you're seeing, you're going to see them throughout the whole thing, buddy. I'm so sorry, but you are. I was hoping this final season would be enough to show how far they came. Then I saw the finale. And it was after we had already planned to do this.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fun. It's fine.
Do you want to hear about some other fandom words before we're done for the night?
We've got 3.5 minutes to spare.
So, fandom vocab. We have talked about that ship. But there's other fandom vocabularies as well. I'm gonna throw something out for you, and I want to see if you can guess what it is. Bronleys. Bronleys. Which sounds like a My Little Pony vein, but it's not.
Say it again.
Bronleys. Bronlies.
Bronleys.
Can you guess what that means? It's not a ship.
It's not a ship.
Although
so
it's kind of inherently tied to a ship in its origins.
It's tied to a ship.
Yeah.
But it's not a ship.
Yeah. Not there is this distinction.
My guess is that Bronleys, being a plural, has to describe either a phenomenon that shows up repeatedly in the show or a category of the fandom.
Category of the
I'm
fandom.
gonna go with the latter. It's some weird subculture within the fandom.
It
What is
is.
it?
It is a term used as typically as pejorative or like insulting, sort of, for fans of the series who value Dean and Sam's relationship more than any others, and they hate it when when an episode is on any character besides Dean and Sam, because they feel like the series should only be around the two brothers and their relationship with each other and how far they're willing to overcome for each other, how
So the
much they're willing
term
to
is
overcome.
the term is an abbreviation of brothers onlys, so
Yes.
bro onlys, bronlys.
Yes.
Okay.
Um.
I could write Ready Player 3. I'm ready to do that now.
God damn it. Oh, was there a Ready Player 2? Ew.
Yeah, it just got out. Twitter's all
Ew.
abuzz.
Ew. I hate Ready Player 1. Me and my brother have very derisive opinions on
We
that.
can get into it. I have thoughts too.
Yeah. But moving on. I hate it. He loves it. But Sam girls. Can you guess what a Sam girl is?
Well, we've already talked about this one. This is girls that prefer Sam, who are trash, by the way.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Um. Yes, they are fans who are on Sam's side no matter what he does and will defend his behavior to most extremes. Then you have the extreme version of Sam girls, which is just extreme Sam girls, where they are so common that the series creates a character to represent them in later seasons.
Oh,
Then you
I didn't
have
realize so many.
then you have their opposite. The Deans,
Oh, sure.
the Dean fangirls, the Dean girls.
Normal human beings.
God damn it. Stop it. I'm trying not to be biased.
I am.
And
I'm going to be biased the whole way through.
and-
I'm throwing the hot takes left and right. I don't have to see your chat.
Teen girls are the same as Sam girls, but there's a history of them asking for things more so than Sam girls. The extreme they never get like representation in the series as the Sam fangirls do. But they were asking for a Myth Dean arc so much, and we'll talk more another episode about what a Myth Dean arc is once we get into later seasons. But they asked for so much, became kind of like a catchphrase for them. And you have extreme Dean girls, but they aren't as like, they don't have as much dirt on them as the extreme Sam girls do. They also did not get a whole character created in the show to represent them. Now, can you ask what Bibros are, or Bibros, or Bibros? I don't know. It's like bibliography, but it's Bibros. I don't know how other people pronounce it, but I could pronounce it 3 different ways, and I would sound right to me.
Okay. Man, without the correct pronunciation, I'm not sure I'll ever figure out what this is a compound of. Obviously, bros at the end. Presumably, this is a term referring to the boys.
Yeah.
I guess this would have to be. I don't know. I think this is. Something weird. It's probably something weird.
I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Bibros simply because, like, if you distinguish the meanings behind those words.
Okay, I think that this has something to do with the boys' sexuality.
It doesn't.
Oh, okay. What is it? What is it?
It is members of the fandom, self-identified fans who are on both brothers' sides equally. So they don't prefer Dean over Sam, and they don't prefer Sam over Dean. They feel like they both have their faults, and they both have their upsides, and they're both great characters. They don't choose one over the other. However, it also is sometimes used as like another term for Bronleys, because it's not uncommon for people who are bibros to also only want the series to focus on the brothers alone, since they love them both so much.
That makes sense.
It does not mean, however, that everyone who is a self-identified bibros or bibros is also a Wincest fan. Although a lot of these terms have overlapping roles in the
Diagrams
fandom.
today. These are some Venn diagrams.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I follow you so far.
Yes, and those are your vocab for this season. We'll get into more as the seasons
that was
go
my vocab.
on.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I know we're 3 minutes over. I'm really sad we didn't get to talk more about the boys themselves because there's just so much else to talk about in this series. But
honestly,
yeah.
I think people are gonna have to wait for our live reaction to the finale. We get into so much with the boys. I didn't want to reiterate stuff we'd already said on tape.
Yeah, but there was also like a lot of stuff that we said that we also like stopped going on tangents for because we were going to talk about tonight. So, yeah.
We've got a whole year of talking about these boys to get through.
We do.
Kids, we're doing this basically every month. We're going to plow through this.
We are doing one season per month, basically. I think there's 1 month where we do 2 seasons in that 1 month, but that's because season 3 is so short. It's literally the shortest of all the seasons. It's only 16 episodes. So, yeah. You're going to get right through that.
Oh, hey. Which brings us to the subject of next week's episode. So, folks will recall last week was my turn to host the show. This week was Taylor's. My turn comes up next week again because that's how turns work. Last week we talked about Doreen Green, the unbeatable Squirrel Girl, who is in fact unbeatable. I didn't get to show this off. I just wanted an excuse to show this off. I was just holding up a doll of Doreen Green, the unbeatable Squirrel Girl, which is adorable and was a gift from a friend who is also a fan of comics, and it's a fun time. It was a very awesome somebody. I just wanted to send a thank you out to the awesome somebody that bought it for me. You're very cool. Anyway, we're leaving behind Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, starting our other ongoing series, which will be hosted by me and experienced by Taylor. Sci-fi fans of the world, get ready because we're doing Babylon 5, kids.
What the hell is that?
Oh my gosh, we're doing Babylon 5. Next week, we're watching Babylon 5: The Gathering, the pilot movie.
What the hell did you just put on your head?
Record our reactions. This is my costume. This is the head from my Ambassador Kosh cosplay that I made for Halloween when I was in grade school. This is the only thing remaining. The rest of it got tossed in a move. It's great. Look at it.
So it looks like a robot.
I'm having a good time.
It looks like a box with a hole in the middle shoved on his head. That's what it looks like.
Oh my gosh, it's great. You're gonna see it. You're gonna have a good time. Oh man, we're having a good time. We're gonna do the thing we did with the season finale and record our live reactions and like edit together a fun little video about it, and then do a full-on episode just talking about Babylon 5 and getting Taylor ready for the Babylon 5 saga. We're doing that. We're doing it at a real slow rate because it's hard to watch this show, but we're doing it. It's gonna be a fun time. Taylor's gonna love it. We're in for a time.
He has scared me when he's talked about it. I have been sent gifts that terrify the shit out of me. So we shall see how it goes. Also, since we're going into December and it will soon be Christmas time, we are also going to be reacting to Klaus, which will be the next one I talk about instead of Supernatural, because that ending has made it I can only handle one Supernatural a month right now. Only one.
I've been Noah.
You've been Noah? You're no longer Noah? Cool. What should I call you now?
I am no longer Noah. I cease to be Noah at the end of these streams.
He'll be Noah again once the next one starts up. And I'm Taylor, who also goes by TyGuys45, and this has been the first season of Supernatural.
Thank you for watching the video. If you liked our discussions on Supernatural Season 1, please subscribe to support our channel. We will be watching and discussing the other Supernatural seasons as we get through the show. Likes are wonderful and greatly appreciated too. If you want to see these episodes get made before they go up on YouTube and Spotify, you can find our Twitch channels to the bottom right and in the description below. We record the episodes on both channels at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights. So, what do you guys think of John Winchester? Please feel free to comment below.